Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, January 12th. It's day 98. Yesterday was my first day here in Jerusalem, and my heart was overwhelmed, feeling the profound privilege of being here in this place, a place that I love, with people that I love. But many who are born here in this land don't even have the same opportunities that I do as an American to come and to visit, to be able to stay, let alone to be able to live. And the grief of these times, it's almost palpable with empty streets, not much traffic, somber alleyways in the old city of Jerusalem. I felt like the streets of the city of peace, cry out, why must the brokenness of humankind be filled with such hatred, division, and strife? It reminded me of the verses in scripture in Proverbs chapter 1 that talk about wisdom. Personified as a woman, it says, wisdom cries out in the street. How long will she love, or how long will you love your simple? How long will you live in mockery? But God promises that whoever listens to him will live in safety and without fear of harm. I've been moved by being here. We've already met with more people than I could count. And I'm afraid that in my daily updates, I won't be able to talk about those specifics or to give a readout. But I just wanted to say that I'm overwhelmed by the trauma that is palpable, the trauma of October 7th that is so pervasive and present. And it's a real trauma of still having unidentified bodies and still not knowing where family members are, of still desperately longing for hostages to be brought home, of still having hundreds of thousands of Israelis who've been displaced from their homes on the northern border or the border of Gaza. And trauma does not compare and grief does not compare, just as there are tens of thousands of Palestinians who have lost family members in Gaza, and the atrocities that are being carried out there and civilians there who are so devastated. Just as trauma does not compare, the tens of thousands of Palestinians who have lost loved ones, the people in Gaza who are going through a deep, desperate need right now, who are living through bombing campaigns. The spirit of this place right now is grief. It's overwhelming. It's one thing to read about. It's one thing for those of us who study it, who understand the facts and statistics, but to be here and to be with people who are so intimately affected, it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. One of the key things that I've been learning is about how Israelis here and Palestinians, for that matter, are not being exposed in any way towards the media about perspectives from the other side. An Israeli human rights expert here said to us that it is not dissimilar to the way that the Russian media was described at the start of the Ukraine war. There's a limited ability not only to be able to empathize with the other side, but there's not even knowledge about what's happening. And how can you empathize if you do not know? And friends, I have to say that the US media is guilty of that too. While we're afraid often to listen to stories that are not politically correct, or maybe that challenge our worldviews, we must engage with perspectives that differ from ours in order to be able to have empathy, in order to be able to pursue mechanisms of peace. And in my updates, I do my best, and I confess we're learning as we do this together, and sometimes there's limited time, that I try to get diverse media sources from Haaretz to the Times of Israel to Al Jazeera to the British Guardian to the New York Times to the Washington Post. And we must get out of our silos. And if we're going to love our neighbors, we must first seek to understand them. So in other news, the International Court of Justice held the first day of hearing yesterday about the South Africa petition that accused Israel of genocide, and it proposed immediate measures to halt the war in Gaza. South Africa's team presented their opening arguments in which they accused Israel of genocidal acts, intent, incitement, noting violent language employed by top Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Forces troops. They requested an order for an immediate ceasefire. And over 3 hours, South Africa made its argument and case before the court. Israel will make their arguments today. Lebanon's Prime Minister Najib Mikati said his country, on other issues, the Lebanon's Prime Minister said that in Lebanon, he wants peace and stability. international diplomacy, and that a ceasefire in Gaza and ending the Israeli aggression towards Lebanon must be a priority, as well as ending recurring violations of Lebanese sovereignty. Families of hostages here, in Israel, protested at the border in Gaza. Yesterday, they had posters of loved ones and they had loudspeakers calling out to those who remain in Gaza. And in Tel Aviv, a protest was banned of Palestinian or Arab Israeli Jewish protest. So it would have been Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs protesting, claiming that it would lead to violence and that it was a breach of peace. The Association for Civil Rights in Israel slammed the police for framing the protest as controversial. The UN Security Council passed a resolution this week demanding that Yemen's Houthis immediately stop attacks in the Red Seas. And then maybe even the biggest news was that the US and Britain joined together and carried out strikes against the Houthis in Yemen. They launched strikes linked to the Houthi movement in Yemen that were the first strikes in Yemen since the Iran-backed group started targeting international ships in the Red Sea. Blinken, according to news reports, hit a wall on his diplomatic visits in Israel. And so that is a report taking a look at. And Hamas said that hostages will not go home alive as long as Israeli forces remain in Gaza, while Netanyahu in Israel is under growing pressure to get the more than 100 hostages that still remain in Gaza home safe. So that's the update for the day. I would encourage you to join us either virtually or in Washington, D.C. For our prayer vigil on the afternoon of Saturday, the 13th. Also, we'll have a prayer vigil on Sunday from Jerusalem. Many, many blessings.